In this tutorial, we're going to cover ACM replication configuration and hot standby. This is actually part 2 of our videos. If you haven't seen the introduction to ACM replication video, please go back to that first. In that video, we cover all the requirements needed, the pre-configuration that you have to make this a successful configuration. So let's take a quick look here in our scenario, and this is where we're going to configure. I have 2 servers, a primary server over here. We call this building A just for some type of reference. So this could be configured anywhere you want as long as you have network connectivity between your LAN, your WAN, depending on, again, where they are located. So in this configuration, my primary server is set to this IP address. I already set the port, an LDAP that comes, the default port in the LDAP. In the second machine, I set a different port, so you need to have different ports in each one. Also, I gave them a name, so ACM primary.home and ACM standby.home. Very, very important. You need to have a DNS server configured, and that DNS server needs to have the name for this server. So you need to have the reference so the appliances can talk between each other. In the replication, it is required to have a DNS server. The appliances will talk by, or they will call each other by host name, not by IP. So you need to have that configured. Without it, there's no way you can get this configuration done properly. So in this case, I have my own local DNS server. It's a small DNS application that I put in my network just to provide that functionality. And then I'm pointing that to that DNS. If for whatever the reason installing this in a customer site and is a closed network and you don't have a DNS server available, there is another way that we can do that, and is using host files. I'm not going to cover host files in here. This will be something that you would have to work with a Vigilant tech support to, so the tech support can go inside your machine, can go into the shell and actually configure that manually, creating the host name and the IP address related to it. So if you have a DNS application, much easier. You just have to go in there and create a record for each one of those appliances and have them connected, okay? And then once we have that, we're going to go ahead and create the replication first between the 2 machines and then a hot standby after that. Now, this is one aspect. So I'm covering also hot standby here, but the first one is replication. Before we proceed, let me also show you a different option that you could have. So let's say that you have multiple servers and you want to create multiple connectivities. So the proper procedure here is to create one replication for each machine in this group. So each machine will talk to each other machine. So it's more a mesh network than anything else. So every machine talks to each other. So when you're creating the replication record, you will create in every replication machine here, you'll create a record for all the other machines in the group. So they all talk to each other, okay? So that's very important. All right, we're gonna go ahead and switch now to the ACM application and start our configuration. I'm gonna go ahead and log in into my primary appliance. Very important, when you're logging in to do replication configuration, you need to log in with the admin account. It's basically the only, I think it's the only part of the system that actually requires this account. You could have another account with all the same privileges as the admin account. It won't matter. You need to log in with the admin account to create this configuration. And the system will tell you that if you don't. It will give you a red message saying that you need to log in with the admin account. All right, I'm logged in ACM. Next step, I'm going to go to the appliance here and create my replication configuration. Before I go there, just to recap this, so if you haven't watched the first video in the introduction of replication, please go back and watch that because you need to define a bunch of things in here. So first, the name of the host name, name server or DNS, and time server. You need to have that configured. If you don't have this, and your time is not synchronizing properly and you don't see the time here on the appliance properly synchronized with the time in your computer, this is not going to work. So you need to first get all that information squared, and once you have that, then you can go and configure. So this is my primary appliance. The secondary needs to have the same thing. So let's take a look at the replication now. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this process on both primary and hot standby or secondary machine. So starting with, I need to go and enable replication right here. You do that, and encryption. I suggest you do encryption for all of them. What's happening behind the scenes is that the two machines will talk to each other using TLS and SSL encryption. Okay. For the primary machine, it says right here, you must use address 1. So this is my primary server, is the first one replicating, so it's address 1. And you need to add a identity password. So you need to add here a password that's going to be used across all the replications to synchronize. In this case, I'm just going to use the same password I use for my admin account. Don't have to, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's just easier for me to remember which password I used. And then there is a event replication port that I want to use for this machine. So I'm just going to use the standard on this one. And on my standby, I'm going to use a different one. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. Okay, this is done. And now I got to go into my hot standby and do the same thing. So here's what I did. Just to keep the two systems running at the same time, I'm using two separate browsers. So that's a little trick. You cannot have the two machines running on the same browser, because there is a synchronization, there is an encryption that goes behind the scenes that the browser will detect that you're trying to use a different machine, and it will have to log back in. So you have to be logging back and forth in each one of them if you're using the same browser. So two different browsers, I can stay connected and I can do all this configuration just fine. So in this case, I'm using Firefox in my primary and Chrome and the secondary machine. So I'm gonna log back into it again, log with the admin account. So this is my standby machine. Let's go ahead and maximize that. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go over here, appliance. Make sure that you have all, again, that you have all this information squared. You have a host name, you have a DNS entry, and in your DNS server, you actually have this machine configured there. So I can resolve name resolution. I can resolve this name into IP to get in contact between the primary and the hot standby machine. It is required, and I'm emphasizing this because I've seen people trying to use IP address and will not work. Replication is going to look for host name and use the DNS to translate the host name to an IP address so it can contact the machines back and forth. So again, make sure you have a DNS, a local DNS that has that information configured. All right, then I check the time here. Okay, this is all looking good. I have already configured my LDAP port. This is a different one from my primary. So make sure that this is different from your primary. And now I'm going to go here into replication, and I'm going to enable replication. I'm going to enable encryption. And this will be, I'm just going to use a sequential number. So this will be address 2. My password, once again, same password as used in the previous machine. And over here, I'm just going to use a different replication port, just in case, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. All right, that part is done. Very easy. Now I'm going to create a subscription. So if you're not paying attention, this is really the moment you need to pay attention to this part, to this video. If you have a primary machine with information already, so I'm going to give you this case. I already have some, so I just switched it to my primary. I already have here 2 records, the default user, and I've just for testing, just to show you, I've created a record. So this is my primary machine that could be completely configured with already, controllers and people and all the configuration. So if that's your case, make sure that you initiate your replication from your standby. So let me bring the, just for illustration purposes, let me go ahead and bring this back up. Okay, so let's say this is my primary machine, just to make sure that this point is clear. If I already have information configured in here, I might already have controllers configured in here, so on, then I need to initiate the replication from my standby, okay? The reason is this: whoever is initiating the configuration of the replication, you will contact the other machine. The database in this secondary machine, in this case my hot standby, will be wiped out. So if I already have something configured, you will lose that information. So very careful. If those are two brand new machines, then it doesn't matter, right? So if you haven't initiated, that's usually the way we suggest you do the configuration, is if you initiating this, if this is a brand new setup, really, then if the two machines are clean, there's no database in there yet, then it really doesn't matter which way you start it. But once again, if you already have a primary machine and that primary machine is configured, you already have the information, make sure that you start your replication from your standby machine, from your secondary machine, or from your new appliance. And then once that appliance connects to the primary that already has information, all the information in the primary system will be sent to the secondary. Okay? All right, with that clear out of the way, okay, so now here's my, my machine is all configured. I'm gonna go ahead and create a new subscription. So I'm gonna go ahead and click in here and go to my host. I'm gonna use the host name. I've done this before, so all I gotta do is just select that. So that's the name of my primary server. The port over there is 4443, and the LDAP port there is 6050, and I'm gonna enter the admin and its password. Okay, when that's done, all you have to do is just hit save here. Now watch what's gonna happen. Click that, and now this log process is initiating. So basically what's happening now behind the scenes is the secondary machine is contacting the primary machine, is creating the replication configuration between the two, and is going to transfer the database from the primary to the secondary. So now anything that happens in the primary, any new transactions, any new card reads, any alarms, anything that happens in the primary system will be duplicated in the secondary. In this case, I'm going to use this secondary machine as my hot standby. So two-step process. First of all, you establish the replication. Once the replication is established, then we can go and create and configure the hot standby. So this process is almost done. It's already restarting the database, and it stops here. So very important. When it gets to here, you need to click in this continue to go back to the configuration. So let's go ahead and click on that. This will take me back to the appliance. In this case, the standby appliance. All right, it's all configured. So now I can, it says right there, replication updated successfully processed. All right, let's take a look at replication. Here it is. I have replication now to the primary. Here's my two machines. Let's read this up a little bit. Oh, I didn't mention about this part here for a reason. Actually, you don't have to do anything in here. Keep the defaults. They are perfect. They are fine to be used. Unless instructed by our tech support team. If you have any problems in replication and you're losing connectivity or you're having some sort of issues and you need to contact tech support, they will assist you. They'll tell you what to do with all those numbers. Otherwise, just leave them the way it is. This seems to be the optimal performance in our system. Okay. Right here, it has created two replications. You can see them right here. So here's my primary box and my standby, and the times are correct. So this is why it's so important to have those time server configured in both servers. Is because they will use that same time to replicate, and they need to be squared. So let's switch to the primary server now. I'm gonna go here and go to the appliance, And notice now we have something different, right? Because I've created a replication, now I can actually look in the appliance configuration for both servers from one appliance. In this case, I'm in a primary. I'm going to go ahead and select the primary here and take a look at it and go to replication. And here's the subscription. Notice that the standby application or the secondary machine created a replication subscription right here on the primary appliance. That's okay. So replication now is working, and we can test that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here to the identities. Again, I'm in the primary machine right now, and I'm going to create a new identity. And let's do Mickey Mouse. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that, just basic information. I'm not going to enter anything else. And maybe photo, just for the fun of it. Let's go ahead and put a photo in there. Here's Mickey. All right, add that, hit save. All right, I'm in a primary machine. Now I'm going to switch to the secondary machine, and let's see if the record is already there. So we're going to go here, go to identities, hit search. And sure enough, here is the new record, okay? It's that fast, including the photo. So the replication works behind the scenes. You don't have to do anything. Now, let's take a look at that and see how that replication was applied before we go and configure the hot standby. So here's my secondary box. I'm going to go ahead and get in there, go to replication, and somewhere over here is going to tell you that synchronization is okay. I guess I can just hit replication sync, and this should give me that. All right, they're both okay. So replication is happening fine, no issues here. So now that I'm in my secondary machine, I'm actually going to turn this machine into a hot standby. Here's what you need to do. I'm going to go back to appliance, and you have this option right here, hot standby. All you have to do here for this server is click on that, hit save. Okay, done here. Okay, now I need to go back to my primary. I'm going to go to appliance. Here's my primary box. Go into replication. And now down here is where I need to go and set that. So I'm going to go ahead and select, this is my hot standby. So now this system knows that it's connected to a hot standby appliance. In this case, I use the same name, so it's easier for me to remember which one is which. So this is my hot standby. I'm going to go ahead and use a TCPA port. I'm just going to go and use a different one. Just make sure that whatever ports you're adding, you want to make sure that if this is going over a WAN, those ports, notice that I have 3 or 4 different ports used in here. All those ports need to be open in your router so this information can flow. Otherwise, it will fail in communication and replication is not going to happen. Okay? Now, if you look here underneath, this has heartbeat time and heartbeat count. If you leave those values on 0, that means by default, ACM will heartbeat time every 60 seconds and it will count 3 times. So that is our default. If you want to change that because of network issues or connectivity, you can go and change that anytime you want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'll talk about this monitor here in just a second. Let's go ahead and save that. Okay, now that's configured very well. Very important part. This option right here, monitor on. What this allowed the system to do is this. Whenever this heartbeat and heartbeat count is exceeded, so here goes. It just did the first synchronization between the two. I was waiting for that to show you that it has transfer for event successes. So it's behind the scenes, the two machines are talking to each other and making sure that they are there and they're alive. And that's important because the standby is going to contact the primary saying, are you there? Are you there? And this is what this heartbeat does. So in this case, because I'm using the defaults, every 60 seconds it's going to go and say, are you there? And it's going to wait for the primary machine to come back and say, yes, I'm here. And then reset the clock, and 1 minute later it's going to do it again and again and just keep doing it. If in 60 seconds it sends a, are you there? And the primary does not answer, it's going to do it again after 60 seconds or 1 minute, and it's going to do one more time, or the third time after another 60 seconds. If after the 3 times it does not receive a reply back from the primary server, that's when the secondary is going to consider that the primary server is down. And this is where this monitor on is important. If you check this, the secondary machine will take over the primary automatically. Now you have to be very careful with that. This is another moment that you should pay close attention to this video. If you check this, you're telling the system to automatically take over whenever the hot standby cannot find a primary. That could be a problem, and I'm going to try to explain why. I'm going to go back to my graph. Okay, so once again, the secondary machine or the hot standby is pinging the primary every 60 seconds to see if it's there. If the primary fails 3 times in a row to reply back, the secondary machine will send an alert out. There is an event for that. It will send an alert out, an event that says, hey, I cannot talk to the primary. And if you have the monitor checked on, turned on, it will take over. This could be a problem, and here's why. So let's for a second imagine that you have your WAN down. The primary server actually running. It is talking, it is fine, but your network is down because these guys reside in different buildings, okay? Now, the secondary machine is trying to take over, say, are you there? Are you there? And is not receiving any replication back or any confirmation because the network is down. What's going to happen is if you have this checked automatically, your secondary server now, or your hot standby, is going to say, okay, I lost the primary, I'm taking over. So now the hot standby is taking over and is going to take over the controllers that are in its own building and any other building that it can connect to because of local network and so on. In the meantime, the primary is not down, it's still working, and is controlling the primary, is controlling those controllers here that are in the primary building. Whenever this network is established back, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem because now you have 2 primary machines running, and the hot standby is not aware that this primary server is still up. Now the controllers are reporting to the hot standby, not the primary. So my suggestion to use this, don't use monitor on, keep that off. You will be notified whenever the network or whenever the connection between the two is down. In other words, whenever the hot standby cannot talk to the primary. After that, you can verify if it's just a network issue or if it's a server that is actually down. So let's say, for example, it is a network issue. So, okay, these controllers in the primary service still connecting, they're still reporting. The controllers on the secondary building are not connecting because they just lost network connectivity, which is okay. They will maintain the database they have locally in each one of those controllers. Doors will continue to open. Everything will continue to work fine. As soon as the network is established back, the controllers here will report back to the primary server, will deliver all the data they had held in their memory, and then the primary server will sync all that information to the secondary server, and everything is going to work fine. The other scenario is that if the primary server is actually down, then you can manually go in the secondary server and say, take over. And now all these controllers that are reporting to the primary will now start to report into the secondary until you have the primary fixed. And then you can go in and demote the hot standby and say, okay, let's have the primary now take over, which in that time, all the controllers will go back to report to the primary and everything will be back to normal. Okay, very long explanation. So let's go back here. So this is why I'll leave this monitor turned off, okay? And if I go back to my hot standby machine, I can go here on the replication, and you're gonna notice that now I have this button here to say take over. So this is my hot standby. This is where if I lose connection with the primary, if the primary is down, I can receive a notification. So there is an event, so you can go here into events, look for the event on replication, and you can actually schedule that event to send you an email notification if you want. And then you can actually verify, see if the server is configured or if the primary server is down. And if it is, I can come here to the standby and just hit this button, and then the appliance will take over. Very well. This is all for this video. Hope this is give you some information on how to create this replication and hot standby. Stay tuned for other videos.